So, when you hear the name Charles Darwin, what pops into your head? It's probably the Galapagos Islands, right? Finches, maybe that famous beard. But what if I told you that his final 40-year obsession was with a creature way more humble, yet, as he found out, way more powerful than anyone ever gave it credit for?
Back in 1869, this is what one critic had to say about Darwin's early ideas about the earthworm. Stupendous. Now, he meant that as a joke, like, no way, that's impossible. But for Darwin, that was a challenge, and he spent the rest of his life proving that critic was absolutely right.
You heard that right. For more than 4 decades, Darwin was meticulously studying these little guys. His very last book wasn't some grand sequel to On the Origin of Species. Nope. It was all about the world-shaping power of the simple worm. He was dead set on showing everyone that their work was, in fact, stupendous. So what got him hooked? I mean, what could drive this lifelong fascination? Well, it all started with a really simple observation. Things left on the ground, like stones or old ruins, they just slowly sink. Darwin figured out why. Worms are constantly bringing soil from down below up to the surface. To really get what they were doing, Darwin had to get inside their heads, or, well, their bodies. And the world of the worm it's totally alien to us. Just try to imagine navigating your entire life with no eyes and no ears. How would you even know what's going on around you? Well, it turns out they live in this world of incredible contrasts. They can't see a thing, but they're super sensitive to light and dark. They can't hear a sound, but they can feel the absolute tiniest vibration. Their whole existence is just pure touch and shadow. And Darwin figured this out with some pretty cool experiments. I mean, you could scream at them. He even played a bassoon right next to them. Nothing. They didn't care. But then he put their flower pots on top of a piano. The second he hit a single key, the vibration sent them zipping back into their burrows. They feel the world, literally through the ground beneath them. But here's where it gets really wild. It wasn't just a simple reflex. Darwin noticed that if a worm was busy, munching on a leaf, it would totally ignore a bright light that would normally make it run for cover. He realized they were absorbed in what they were doing. He actually called it attention. And this idea of attention, sent Darwin down an even crazier path. He started to wonder, okay, if a worm can pay attention, can it think? Could this tiny, simple creature actually have some form of intelligence? So what does he do? He sets up a test. The puzzle wasn't something he made up. It's a real-world problem worms have to solve every single night when they plug up their burrows to stay safe. The puzzle piece was a pine needle. And if you've ever really looked at one, it's basically two sharp points connected at a wider base. Now, if you try to pull that into a tiny hole by the pointy ends, they're going to spread out and get hopelessly stuck. Let's just break that down real quick. Your goal is to plug your burrow. The wrong way to do it is to pull from the sharp tips. That's like trying to shove an open umbrella through a mail slot. It's just not going to work. The right way, the only way that makes sense, is to grab it by the wide base and let the needles slide in perfectly. So what did the worms do? Darwin watched them, and he found that they pulled the pine needles in by the base almost every single time. They were solving the puzzle, over and over again. This was definitely not random. But was it just instinct, or was something else going on? Was it intelligence? This was the genius part of the experiment. To make sure it wasn't just some built-in pine needle instinct, Darwin created a puzzle that no worm in the history of the world had ever seen before. He cut little triangles out of paper, smeared them with some fat so they'd be tasty, and just left them out for the worms. And the results were just mind-blowing. Okay, if it were random, they'd probably pull the triangles by the wide base, most often, right? It's a bigger target. But they didn't do that. A whopping 62% of the time, they correctly grabbed the pointy tip, the most efficient way to drag it into a burrow. They were analyzing a completely new shape and figuring out the physics of it. Darwin's conclusion was pretty clear. He wrote that worms must be able to, quote, judge the best way of dragging an object. I mean, that points to a real, if basic, form of intelligence, a mind at work. Okay, so let's zoom out. If a single worm can show that kind of judgment, what happens when you multiply that by the billions and billions of worms all over the planet? You go from the small intelligence of one worm to the massive geological force of them all working together. Darwin had a name for it: vegetable mold. Today, we just call it topsoil. And here was his big, bold claim: that entire fertile layer all over the world has been eaten, digested, and pooped out by earthworms over and over for millions of years. They are literally building the ground we walk on from the inside out. And this constant churning, bringing soil up from below, has this incredible side effect. It slowly, steadily buries everything on the surface. You could say that worms are the planet's silent archivists, burying our history for us. I mean, check this out. A Roman villa in Abinger, England. It was built around 200 AD, then abandoned, left to crumble. For the next 1,600 years, worm after worm after worm did its thing, covering the beautiful mosaic floors with their castings. By the time Darwin showed up, the whole villa was just gone, buried under a thick blanket of rich soil made entirely by worms. And that brings us right back to where we started. Darwin set out to prove that the work of the worm was stupendous, and boy did he ever. He showed that this creature everyone ignored is actually one of history's greatest unsung heroes. Seriously, just look at the resume. They create the fertile soil we need to grow our food. They aerate the ground like an army of tiny gardeners. They act as archaeologists in reverse, preserving ancient ruins. And, as we just saw, they show a really surprising knack for solving problems. I think the biggest takeaway from Darwin's final masterpiece is this. Huge, world-altering change doesn't always come from some big, violent event like an earthquake. Sometimes it comes from the quiet, persistent, and surprisingly intelligent work of the smallest creatures among us.
Darwin said it best himself. After 40 years of studying them, he came to this conclusion. It's doubtful that many other animals have played such an important role in the history of the world as the humble earthworm. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other quiet, overlooked forces are out there right now, working away, shaping our world in ways we haven't even started to notice yet?